What is going on? And welcome back to another episode of the Soundtrack of Self podcast. I'm your host, Paulina, and today I want to kick off this episode with a short Q&A. I've received 3 questions from some followers of mine on Instagram. Now, if you have any questions for me, or if you have anything that you think I have knowledge about and you would want to know about, you can always hit me up, and I would love to implement that in my episodes. So, 3 different questions. I'm going to start with the shortest one. Do you have kids? No, I don't. But I would love to have kids one day. What's your zodiac sign? I'm a Taurus, baby. I'm a Taurus, and I love being a Taurus. I think in another life, I may have been a Virgo, but in this life, I'm a Taurus, and I'm enjoying this. And the third question is, since when have you been making music? I've been making music since I can, I guess, talk, because I remember, I can't remember how I was when I was 3 years old, but I do remember when I was around 4 or 5, I was kind of singing in the bathroom while I was pooping as a baby or as a kid, as a toddler. And so, and then I went to the choir, and then, basically, I would say I was around 4 to 5 years old when I started really making music. And professionally, when I started making music was when I was 16, when I joined music college. So yeah, thank you for those questions, by the way. I'm looking forward to more questions, and because I really enjoy doing that. Now, today's episode, I do want to dive deep into the days that we have sometimes. Sometimes we have very low energy days where we don't feel like doing anything. And it may come from stress, and it may come from trauma, and it may come just from exhaustion of this life. Because, honey, living in this life sometimes is really not easy. We have a lot of stuff that we have to figure out. And at the end of the day, we're all just humans, and we're all just on this earth for the very first time. Like, there is nobody that was on this earth. We wasn't on this earth before, so it wasn't like we already know how to live a life, so let's do it again in the next life. I do think, spiritually speaking, I do believe in like souls, and kind of like your body dies but your soul doesn't, it keeps on living, so sort of reincarnation type of thing. But that's not what this episode will be about. It's more about, we're all just humans, and we're doing this life thing for the very first time. So be gentle with yourself. So if you have a day where you are low on energy and you don't feel like doing anything, I have a few tips that I wrote down, things that I always do, because currently, I gotta be honest, I am going through the same thing currently. Now, there is a few things in my life that are happening behind the scenes that I'm not yet ready to talk about, which I'm sure at some point I will talk about. But for now, I am, dealing, I think, with a lot of stress it is, and probably it's more like emotional stress. So it's very hard for me to kind of keep my mind in a very steady and very comfortable, steady and healthy way. So I'm kind of struggling right now. However, I do have coping mechanisms that I've learned in therapy. I have coping mechanisms that I figured out for myself, things that work for me. And that's not to say that I will not be in a hole. That's not to say that it will be completely avoided. Like I said, we're all humans, and you should be gentle with yourself. When you have those days, my suggestion would be to figure out first, where do you think it could come from? Is it a stress response, or is it a trauma response? Now, how do you know the difference? I'm not a psychologist, so I cannot speak very educated about this. I can only tell you what I've learned from my therapist, what my therapist said. And so a stress response is something that is happening right in that very moment. So, you have so much going on and you're just so exhausted in that very moment because it's so much going on. And that is kind of like a stress response. Now, if you don't have anything going on and your life is quiet and everything is kind of chill, but you still feel like very overwhelmed and you feel very stressed and anxious, then that may be a trauma response from things that happened before things were calm and collective, or slowed down. So that could be a trauma response. And like I said, I'm not an expert in that field. This is just what I heard from multiple psychologists, therapists. And so I think it's important to first figure out, is that a trauma response or is that a stress response? To then see, what can you do to cope with all those things? Now, you could kind of seek professional help, because professional help, in my personal opinion, is always the best go-to. If you have the opportunity to do that. I know here in Germany, if you have health insurance, it will be governmental. So that means that you can go to a licensed therapist, and you don't have to pay for it. However, I know that in Germany, the waiting lists are just immense. Like, they're long. They're ridiculously long. And I know that sometimes you really have to just be patient. And if you are dealing with suicidal thoughts, and if you are dealing with harming yourself or thinking about harming others, then please, please, please call the hotline. They do have German hotlines available where you can always call. And if you don't want to do that because they're strangers, talk to a friend. My first advice would be, talk to somebody. Just open up. Talk to somebody that you think gets you. If you have that one specific friend, talk to that friend. Talk to that friend and let them know how you feel. I was one day when I had the worst depression of my life. I think it was around 21 years old. And I'm going to tell you guys how it went. So I think that was a trauma response because it was like a mix of both. I had a trauma response and a stress response at the same time. And I feel like this got me to fall into this depression. And I fell into this depression. How I first noticed it was I went to work and I barely had time for myself. So I used to wake up at 4 a.m. I was at work at 6, and then I was working until 1800 or so, and then I was home at 7. Then I had to pre-cook, and then I basically was sleeping time. And in order to, even though I was already tired, but in order to cope with things, I used to smoke weed. So I smoked weed in order to fall asleep faster and fall asleep earlier, because otherwise I couldn't sleep because my head would just like overthink, and then it would be like 12 o'clock, and then in 4 hours I'd have to get up, and then it would just be a constant exhaustion going on. So I smoked weed in order to fall asleep earlier, and then I would still be exhausted the next day because I just couldn't give my body a break. I was working almost 7 days a week, and I barely had any breaks in between. Now, when that happened, I remember that one time, I knew it, mind you, I knew I was exhausted. I knew something was not right, but I just couldn't do anything about it. I was just like going with the flow kind of. And I wasn't aware also. So that one time I got home and I started crying. I just went through the door and I just bursted out in tears. And I didn't have a specific reason for it. Like, there was nothing in that moment or that day or the day before that happened that made me sad. But I just had this underlying feeling of sadness. And on the other hand, I didn't feel anything. So it was kind of like weird. I felt the sadness, and this is when I bursted out in tears, but I couldn't figure out why. So this was the first time that actually I noticed like something is not right. Like, that's super weird for me. And at first I was I wouldn't say comfortable, but I was like, oh, okay, well, just something's going on. I don't know what it is, but I have to keep on pushing. I have to, make it through, whatever. So what am I going to do, right? So, and then it just got worse, because if you don't do something about it mentally, emotionally, if you don't talk to anybody, if you're just living with it, it's just gonna creep up on you even more and more and more, until you reach a point where you just don't see any solutions anymore, until it reaches a point where you just don't want to deal with things anymore, and you just want to off yourself. And so this is what happened with me. I really was one time, I think a few weeks later, I became very afraid of myself, because I had all those negative thoughts, and I had those very harmful thoughts towards myself. I was thinking about how could I kill myself in the painless way, like in the most painless way, like taking drugs or something that I barely would feel that I'm dying or something like that. And so I was kind of like thinking, like, how could I do that, And it's a little bit of a sensitive topic for me, so I may cry a little bit, but that's okay. I enjoy being vulnerable. So yeah, it was that time when I got home, I bursted out in tears one more time. That kind of happened on the regular after that first time. And I used to listen to so much sad music, like music that just kind of confirmed the way that I already felt. And it was kind of like a safe space for me at that time. And it made me feel at least something, because otherwise I was just kind of on autopilot and working through things, like working my job and working through my job and just doing my job and, not really emotionally functioning. And so that time when I got home, bursted out in tears again, before I did that, so when I went home after work, there was like a bridge, and I always, on my way home, I, crossed the bridge. And then that evening, I was on that bridge, and I couldn't control my thoughts. Like, I couldn't control what I'm thinking anymore. I just had thoughts, and I didn't trust myself. I didn't know what is going on. I wasn't aware. I was just doing whatever. And so I was standing on that bridge, and I was really contemplating, like, just jumping off of it. It wasn't too high, so I knew I wasn't gonna, nothing was gonna happen other than probably a few broken bones. So I didn't really do it. And then I continued to go home. But I was standing there, and I was checking out the height, and I was checking out, if there are people around and stuff. And then I was like, okay, but what reasons? And then I cried, and then it was just a very dark time for me. And so when I got home, I bursted out in tears again, and I took a bath, and I was trying to basically suffocate myself by holding myself under the water for as long as I could until I passed out. I wanted to pass out, which didn't happen, because something in, like, the last cell in my functioning and healthy brain, when I remember when I was about to literally lose my breath, and I think I would have passed out if I didn't come up. But before I came up, I had a last functioning brain telling me, like, no, catch some air. And so I did that, and afterwards it was pretty late, and I remember I just didn't want to talk to anybody about it. I was too ashamed, and I felt very alone, because I didn't feel like I had a very safe, I would say, environment around me. And I felt like people didn't get me. People didn't understand me. And so, excuse me, I have to sort of, yeah, it's very emotional talking about it. I don't talk about that often. I don't really talk about that to people at all, but I do think it's a beautiful thing that now I can share that. So I didn't feel safe talking to anybody about it. And in that moment, I did not think that there was a hotline that I could call. All I did was I called the psychiatric clinics around in that area, and I called them, and I was like, I don't know. I'm afraid of myself. I don't know what I will do next. I cannot control my thoughts. I don't have anybody to talk to, though I had my best friend, and I always trusted my best friend, but I did not want to talk to anybody in that moment. I was way too ashamed, and I was way too, I guess I wasn't ready to share that. And so, yeah, I called up psychiatric clinic. They told me, we don't have any space right now. So that was a really crazy thing that I heard. Because in my head, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through that night. I don't know if I'm going to make it. I had suicidal thoughts twice that evening. So I don't know if I'm going to make it through the night. I cannot control myself anymore. I cannot control what I do because my body is just acting upon my thoughts, and my thoughts are out of control. So I can't really know what's going to happen next. At that point, I lost control of myself. Like I was just doing whatever, And so, yeah, I don't know. They told me I cannot come. And if I do want to come, maybe I should call the ambulance and stuff. And then I was like, that's like, everything is just, it's just too much work. Like, I was like, everything is just so much work. Like, fuck that. And then I was like, tomorrow I'm just going to find a therapist. Tomorrow I will find a therapist, and tomorrow I will talk to somebody. Now, I went to bed, and the next day, the universe works in very, very mysterious ways. But if you know what you want, and if you say what you want, I said I am going to find a therapist tomorrow. I will find a therapist tomorrow. And the next day, I worked in a clinic, but that was like an orthopedic clinic, so unfortunately, I couldn't call them. But they also had psychologists there because when you're dealing with a lot of pain physically, it can affect your emotions, your psyche and stuff. So they have psychologists there that took care of the patients that were in physical pain for over decades. Sorry. And so that day I was at the reception, and my job, or one part of my job, was to take to like register the new doctors that come and to deregister the doctors that are leaving. They had like a mailbox for their mail and all that stuff. And so I checked. The first thing I did in that morning when I came to work, I checked for psychologists in that clinic, and I reached out to them. And some of them weren't available, and one was available, but he said he was going to call me back. And then shortly afterwards, there was a doctor that came, psychologist. She came there, and I didn't know she was a psychologist. She just came, and she said she wanted to deregister because she's leaving the clinic. And I was like, okay, no problem. So she gave me the paperwork, and I checked the paperwork, and it said psychologist. And I was like, oh, And I was like, oh, she's leaving. So she must, I don't know, she must have something else that she's doing now. And when I deregistered her and I came back to her and I asked her, I was like, oh, so why are you leaving? I seen you a psychologist. So why are you leaving? And she said, oh, I'm actually leaving because I'm opening my own office. And I was like, really? Is that here in the same city? She was like, yeah. And I was like, do you still have spots available? And she said, yeah. And I was so grateful in that moment when she said, we can make an appointment. When do you have time? And I said, as soon as you can, because I really, really need help. And it was like a sign for me. It was like a sign for me to really get that shit in order, to really get help. It was a sign that I'm doing the right thing. Like I said, the universe works in mysterious ways. And so I have made an appointment with her a few days later, because I think it was a Friday or something, and we had an appointment on Tuesday. And she even asked me, are you going to make it until then? Because I told her that I'm really not stable at all. And she gave me her number. And she said, if anything, call me. If not, then I'll see you on Tuesday. And so Tuesday came around and I was super grateful. Mind you, the other therapist also called back, but since I already had a slot, I was like, okay, well, that's all I needed. I just needed professional help. And yeah, Tuesday came around and I went there, and it was the beginning of a beautiful relationship to myself as well as with the therapist. She was a wonderful woman, and I'm super grateful for her, because she's really helped me getting that shit under control. And so that's as far as my story goes when it comes to that one emotional deep hole, or one mental deep hole that I fell into when I was 21 years old. I'm now 28. And that time was super, super difficult for me. I didn't mention, the next day when she came there and stuff, I also talked to my best friend. I was crying, sent her a voice memo, and she said she's very happy that I reached out to her. But that evening, I just couldn't reach out to anybody, the evening before. So with my story about that one time in my life, very dark time in my life, I do want to raise awareness. Talk to somebody, talk to somebody if you need help. And if you don't feel like there is a safe environment for you to talk to somebody about, such as friends or family, and if you don't have that privilege, like I didn't have during that time, of feeling comfortable enough because I just feel like nobody got me or nobody gets me, it's very hard to feel misunderstood like that. But there are ways to make it through. And, just because the clinic didn't accept me, it doesn't mean your clinic in your surrounding or in your nearby area will not accept you, So always try. If you are too ashamed to talk about that to your friends and to your family, then try seeking professional help. If you do have money on the side, you can always have a professional counselor online. We have those services these days. COVID really made us more digital. And so I feel like if you do have money on the side, really take that and invest that in your mental health. If you have the opportunity and you don't have any other opportunity to talk to a professional, especially right away. Other than that, there are hotlines you can always call. And always remember that. Like, I did not think about it in that moment. All I thought about was calling clinics. But, either way, just call somebody. Just call somebody and try calling somebody that is a professional, like a hotline service, or because they do have professional counselors, or call, the psychiatric clinic or the ambulance. That could be it could just be the ambulance if you're so scared of yourself. With me personally, it was so much work. I was too exhausted to do that. If you have the strength, you can call the ambulance, and they will bring you to the place that you need to be to make it through for however long you need. So yeah, I went into second therapy years later. Well, now it's like a year ago. And through that therapy, through the second therapy, I have learned ways to avoid getting to that place. Because truth be spoken, we will always encounter stressful situations in life. We will always encounter emotional stress. We will encounter pain, and we will encounter trauma. Hopefully not, but life is life. And sometimes bad things happen to us, or bad things happen to our loved ones. And it's not avoidable. You cannot have a harmonious life for the rest of your life. You cannot have a peaceful life for the rest of your life. You can have that. But in order to have that, you have to find ways to not get to that place where you're so deep in your mental hole that you cannot get out. And so I want to share some tips from my side, from my experiences, as of how I managed to go through emotional difficulties. And mind you, sometimes I'm still struggling, but I'm feeling pretty good. If I look back to everything that happened the last year, I have had moments of a lot of sadness and a lot of anger and a lot of just pain in general, But at the same time, I really coped with it very well. I stopped drinking and smoking weed completely, actually exactly 6 months ago. Today's the 20th. Yeah, I stopped January 19th, and today is July 20th. So I stopped drinking and smoking half a year ago. And I think I can't really consciously say the reason why, because I didn't really have a specific reason why, but I do think it's because I wanted to be in control more of myself, because I felt like I was partying a lot again. I was going out a lot again, and I was drinking a lot again. And I had moments where I just feel like the alcohol and the weed just brought out my anxiety, just brought out my sadness, the pain. It made me feel it so much more. And it was so much more painful to drink and to smoke weed than to not do it, because that actually brought out the deepest scars in me. And I just decided to stop it, because I don't see a benefit from intensifying those feelings, knowing that they're there regardless, and being aware that they're there, just feeling them more intensely and then feeling like shit the next day. I didn't see no benefit in that. And so I stopped drinking and smoking. And I have to say, there are a lot of benefits. I can make another episode about that. But for now, I want to tell you, like, if you feel like alcohol or weed is bringing out even more anxiety or more stress in you, or maybe more pain, or even just the fact that you're excessively drinking and you just don't know your limits, is already reason enough for you to really look at it and be like, what am I really going through? Because this, the alcohol and the weed isn't the problem. The problem is a feeling that you have that you're trying to cope with in unhealthy ways. And So what I did, I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking, and I started looking at healthier ways to cope with things. And fortunately, through therapy, I could get some tips and tricks, such as, for example, if you feel like you're depressed, you can take walks. Now that is super cliche, but hear me out. Taking walks is really the shit. Okay, I'm not the type of person, I never was the type of person to love taking walks, but I do enjoy it now more because I know what kind of benefits it brings into my life. And taking walks is super underrated. If you don't feel like walking like an hour, then just walk around the block. Just that. If you have a depressed day, if you have a overwhelming environment right now and you're super stressed and you don't feel like moving when you get home, you don't feel like doing anything when you get home, just take a walk around the block. Just that, it's like 10 minutes or so. Like just that could benefit you in ways you have no idea, because it literally is something about taking walks. Psychologists can really explain that very well. I really can't, but I just know it has amazing benefits for especially your mental state. So taking walks is one thing, and trust me, I did not feel like taking walks, and it took me like a year to get in that mind state of wanting to take a walk. So just, make a plan if you feel like it. Make a plan and think like, hey, this is what I want to do. And if you, in that moment, when you want to do it, you procrastinate and you're just like, no, I don't feel like it, then try again. And that is kind of also like my formula to life. If you want to get better, and if you want to do better, and if you want a thing that you know is good for you, then try again. And if it's not working out, then try again and try again, because at some point it will work out. Like there is no way around it. The universe will not give you what you want if you keep trying, Now it has to be something that is good for you. It has to be something that can benefit you, something that you enjoy doing, Even if it's not something that you enjoy doing, maybe you have to get in the uncomfort of things and, get into a space where you deserve to be in a positive way, moving away from your old life to your new one. So it is actually the second thing already. Do things even when you don't feel like doing it. Taking walks, going to the gym, even calling your friends. If you don't feel like sharing things with your friends, that could be it, but do it anyways. Cook, you don't feel like cooking, you feel like being super lazy and ordering out every day and eating like shit, if you don't feel like cooking, just do it anyways. And sometimes it's mentally challenging to do that. Even for me these days, it's still challenging to just do it, And on the other hand, it can be really simple if we just stop overthinking, but that's also easier said than done. So we're just very complex. We as humans are just super, super complex, and we cannot just be like, oh, just stop overthinking. And then you just stop overthinking, get out of that relationship, and you just get out of the relationship. We would save ourselves so much emotional and so much even physical pain if we would just listen to what we have to do, even if we don't feel like doing it. Stop overthinking, get out of the relationship. If we did that, actually, then life would be a lot easier and it would save us tremendous amount of pain. But at the same time, we're also complex. We're humans are complex. We have different emotions. We have different thoughts. We have different pasts. We have different visions of futures. Maybe we don't even know what we want just yet. So we are complex, but, just keep that in mind. Just things like these that could help you, just keeping them in mind could get you up moving in moments where you don't feel like moving, just because you have that in your head, just because you've heard that once in your life. Just because you've heard that one time in your life, it could stick with you. And in that very moment, when you don't feel like doing anything, it will come to you and it will be like, just do it. Just don't overthink it. Just do it. And then you would eventually get up and do it, actually. Maybe not the first time, maybe the first time, maybe not the fifth time, but maybe the sixth time. So just have that in your head and keep reminding yourself. If you keep reminding yourself, eventually it will implement in your life. So yeah, talk to friends that get you. I already said that. Talk to friends that get you. If you don't feel like you have friends that get you, maybe it's time for some new friends. But really, if you have friends that get you, talk to them if you need to. That is super precious. Your friends will appreciate you for opening up. They will appreciate your trust towards them, and you will appreciate them too. It can strengthen a relationship, by the way, between friendships, even relationships. Talk to a professional. Like I said in the very beginning, if you have the opportunity, talk to a professional. In Germany, we also don't only have professional counselors and professional therapists, licensed therapists that you can talk to, which the government will pay out of your insurance. But we also have, I don't know how it's called, but we have like departments of Diakonie or Stadtmission, things like these that are kind of part of the church, but it doesn't matter because the counselors there, they're totally unbiased, and they're not looking for people that are in that church or part of that group. So they're just basically, they're part of their services, but their service is independently from who the counselor is. The counselor could be not believe in God, but basically the whole service, the whole department is from a church, for example. And so, yeah, they have counselors and they have free services. They have free counseling. So yeah, also, like I said, if you have money on the side, then don't hesitate taking that money and investing it into your mental health. Because if you have a moment of very deep emotions and you don't know how to cope, and maybe you are about to do something stupid, then take that money that you have and invest it in your mental health. It's an investment. It's not a waste. If it's for your mental health, it will always be an investment. So it's also, you're worth being on this earth. You're worth just being born. Like, you don't have to do anything to be worth it. You don't have to be somebody or do something to be worth something. You are already worthy because you are just on this earth. You was born, you already are precious. You're a human, so always keep that in mind too. One thing I find that helps me with not getting into a very deep state of mental struggles is acting on my passion. That really, it's kind of like an outlet, I would say. So it can look different for you. For me personally, it's just doing this podcast. It's going to the studio, recording music. Sometimes even cooking can be therapeutic to me. But it's something that absolutely helps me to avoid getting into a very, very deep hole. And I have days where I don't feel like going. I feel like very lazy, or maybe I feel super just like stressed and I don't want to deal with people and I just don't feel like doing anything. And then those days, sometimes I force myself to go. I force myself to go back to the thing, do things even when you don't feel like it. I force myself to go. And then I'm going, and maybe I'm not inspired that day. Maybe I'm not really in the mood, but then I'm still there and I'm still going through beats and I'm still recording a little bit of something. And that's better than not doing anything. And just this little thing, even, that one time I did not feel like doing anything. I still went to the studio. I was feeling like shit. And I really wanted to just stay in my bed and watch Netflix the whole day and not do nothing. But then I got out. I was just like, fuck it. I'm just going to go. Like, even if I don't feel like it, I'm just going to see what it brings. Most of the time, when I'm there, it gets me super driven and inspired. And then, I kind of, that pulls me out of my hole. But then I have days like that one time where I just I went there and I was there and I was still not feeling it. I was just like, I want to go back to my bed. And it happened. But at the same time, in the long run, it made me feel better. And why? Because I still made some sort of progress. I acted on my passion, and it still gave me some sort of safety and stability. So yeah, act on your passion, man. Like I said, it could look different for you. You could go boxing as an outlet. You could go just taking a walk or jogging or going to the gym or recording podcasts. I don't know, whatever your passion is, just go and act on it, especially in moments when you don't feel like it. Try getting out of your bed and really go there, at least try and see, because personally speaking, I feel like probably 6 or 7 times out of 10, it will pull you out. Your passion will pull you out of your hole. That's just my perspective on it. And one thing that I have done throughout those years, and I feel like they have helped me, not specifically in that very moment, but in the long run, because everything you hear and everything you see is coming into your unconscious mind, things that you're not conscious of. And so everything has an effect on you and your mind. And if you cannot act on your passion, then try watching inspirational or motivational videos. Now, like I said, it's not always helping in that very moment. With me personally, when I do that, it helps 8 times out of 10. No, let me not lie. It helps 6 times out of 10. Okay, 6 times out of 10, it helps me to watch those inspirational and motivational videos in that very moment. Now, the other 4 times, it really doesn't help and it doesn't do anything. So I'm just like, it's not doing anything. I cannot get my ass up anyways, I'm still in my little bubble and I cannot, even though I'm watching this inspirational and motivational video, I cannot get out of my hole. And I had a friend and I explained to her, because she told me the same thing. She was like, it doesn't help. I tried it. It doesn't help. And I told her, I know it doesn't help in that moment, but in the long run, it will help you, because 3 or 4 years from now, if you keep doing that in those moments when you feel low energy, when you feel low and you watch a motivational video and it doesn't get you out of that hole, then in 3 or 4 years from now, if you keep doing that, your unconscious will have that in your mind. You will have that in your mind because you have watched those before in moments when you felt bad. And then you will eventually act upon it. Your body just naturally does it. If you feed it unconscious positive things, it will consciously become positive. But sometimes it just does that. It just doesn't happen in that very moment, but happens at a later point. It's like practice, You can basically, it's like mental exercise. You go to the gym and you expect progress right away, but it's not working right away. It's basically the same thing. You go to the gym, you work out, and you don't have results right away. You don't go to the gym today and tomorrow you're a bodybuilder. Things don't work like that. So over time, if you keep doing that, you will just see progress. You will see progress, and maybe you won't see progress, but maybe one day somebody makes you a comment, even if you feel like you haven't made progress, and somebody tells you yo, you've become really bulky, and then suddenly you're just like, whoa, hold up, what? So it was the same with me when I lost some weight. I was like, I'm not really making progress. And then I had a friend tell me whoa, you've lost a lot of weight. And I was like, I didn't see the progress. So this is why it's important. Stick with it, even if it doesn't help in that very moment, because it may really not help in that very moment. Sometimes it does. So why not try? Why not try and give it a shot? And give it a shot each time, because every time you try could be a breakthrough. And like I said, if those are things that are good for you, and they can be good for you, especially in the long run, if you keep mentally exercising with inspirational videos, with figuring out things about yourself, your values, if you keep finding tools to deal with things, Google things, if you YouTube things, like, we're living in such a privileged generation. We have access to so many beautiful things, also a lot of misinformation, but we'll focus on the positive things here. So because you have the choice to believe. You have the choice to believe the negative, or you have the choice to believe the positive. You have a choice what you want to agree with and what you don't want to agree with. And so I feel like motivational and inspirational videos may not help in that moment, but it will for sure help you in the long run. Because to me, it's mental exercise. Write down your goals. Write down your vision of your future, what you want. And those are all tools in order to not get into this deep hole, into this deep depression, into those suicidal thoughts. It's so exhausting. And I know what I'm talking about. It's so exhausting, and it takes all the energy out of you. So if you take the energy that you have right now, if you're not in a hole, or maybe you're, on your way and you feel like you're stressed and you feel like you're overwhelmed and you don't know what to do, then just, try some tips and tricks that I've given you, or Google something or YouTube something, and try things out that work for you. Just try them out. There's nothing bad that can happen from it if you follow the right things, mind you. So yeah, with that being said, I really hope this could be helpful for you, just as much as it was helpful to me, or is helpful to me. I'm managing to get through things right now very well, though I have sad days, but I am actually very surprised. I just had my friend call me the other day asking how I was doing, and I told her, like, I'm doing actually pretty good. Like, I know I have sad moments, and I have moments where I cry, but I'm still okay, because I'm not in my bed. I'm not in my bed crying and like overwhelmed with every and anything. And yeah, I do have a moment, but it comes and it goes, because I'm just human, and I'm accepting this moment for what it is. It's just a moment. And so with that, I want to close off that episode. Thank you so much for listening. I hope it can be helpful, and I see you next episode. Bye-bye.